This is Steele singing, right? Was that Pete?
That's Pete.
Really?
Yeah. That's Pete's voice. Yeah.
Sounds like an
I know. Yeah. That's what he sounded like. Now, the two ballads that I've let you hear so far are generally ballads that, when you hear them in the United States, you can immediately tell that these have an old world origin. Enough of the trappings, sometimes just the language, references to fair-skinned ladies and servants and things like that, references to lords and things that would be out of place in an American cultural context, and sometimes specific place names as well. Give you immediately a sense that you're listening to something whose origins are from the old world. There are other times where these old world ballads are naturalized to a certain degree. That is, the cultural references, the names, the places, and all those kinds of things are updated to sound more American. And I have another child ballad that I want to sing for you that is an example, I think, of a naturalized, what I would call a naturalized ballad. The original version, or at least the title that Child gives it, is The Raggle-Taggle Gypsy. It's number 200 out of his collection, better known as Gypsy Davy or Blackjack Davy. I see a lot of you nodding in recognition, because this is a standard song in the American folk old-time repertory, recorded by the Carter family, recorded by lots and lots of people under various titles and in various versions. But it is actually a Scottish ballad in the original version. The story, which has some similarities to the story of the house carpenter, it's a woman who is married to a lord, but she doesn't like her life of luxury. She finds it boring. So the gypsy, the rapscallion, the rounder, as he would be called in the American context, comes and takes her away. The lord, who becomes the boss man in some American versions, comes home at night and he finds that his wife is gone, so he gets on his fastest horse and goes after them, to save the day. And when he does finally find her, he says, "All right, I'm here to save you, let's go home." And she says, "Not so fast. I kind of like it out here sleeping on the ground. Rather than my luxurious feather bed, I'd rather be out here on the ground with the Gypsy Davy or the Blackjack Davy." Woody Guthrie has a recording of this song, which is probably the most Americanized of all the ones that I've heard, where he turns it into a regular old cowboy song. Basically, when the boss man on his horse finally catches up to this team of bandits, they're sitting around the campfire singing with their old guitar, and it's that kind of imagery. You listen to the Woody Guthrie version, if you didn't know the history and the origin of the song, you'd have no idea that it comes from Scotland. So thoroughly Americanized is it. But I'm going to sing not exactly the Woody Guthrie version. This is sort of a composite version that I put together over the years, based on various sources. No one in particular stands out, but I sing it as Blackjack Davy, and here it is. Blackjack Davy come riding through the woods, singing so loud and gaily, made the hills around him ring, charmed the heart of a lady. How old are you, my pretty little miss? How old are you, my honey? She answered him with a sweet little smile, I'll be 16 come Sunday. Come go with me, my pretty little miss, come go with me, my honey. I'll take you where the grass grows green, you never shall want for money. She pulled off her high-heeled shoes made of Spanish leather. She put on her low-heeled boots, they both rode off together. boss came home acting about his lady. The servant spoke before he thought, she's gone with the blackjack Davy. Go saddle for me my blackest horse, for the gray was never so speedy. I'll ride all day and I'll ride all night till I overtake my lady. Well, he rode all night till the broad daylight, came to a river raging, and there he spied his darling bride in the arms of blackjack Davy. Pull off them long blue gloves made of Spanish leather. Give to me your lily white hand, both right on together. Well, I'm forsaking my house and home, I'm forsaking my baby, and I'm forsaking my husband dear to go with the blackjack Davy. Last night I lay in a warm feather bed beside my husband and baby. Tonight I lay on the cold, cold ground in the arms of blackjack Davy. Blackjack Davy come riding through the woods, singing so loud and gaily. Made the hills around him ring, charmed the heart of a lady. Now, of course, there are new ballads that originated here in the United States, which are, by definition, younger ballads, more recent ballads, native ballads, you might call them. They have been called by scholars. And there's a rich tradition of them. Being younger, it's sometimes much easier to document real historical circumstances that gave rise to these through eyewitness accounts, through court records, through police reports, through newspaper accounts, and so on. There are lots of these. They have some common themes begin to emerge when you look at Native American balladry. Crime and punishment, particularly murder and execution, seem to be number one on that list. Of course, it's not new to the American tradition. There are lots and lots of Old World ballads about notorious crimes as well. There are a lot of ballads about disasters, both natural and man-made. So tornadoes and floods, of course, but also train wrecks and that sort of thing, mining disasters. There are also ballads having to do with major works projects. So the Erie Canal, for instance, the building of the Erie Canal gave rise to a whole body in and of itself of ballads and other songs related to that big project. One of the first scholars to take this seriously, Native American ballads, was John Lomax, the father of Alan Lomax. And in 1910, John published his book, Cowboy Songs and Other Frontier Ballads, which is primarily music that he had gathered in and around Texas. And he was the first one in any serious way, in any significant way, to take a real scholarly look at American balladry, because before that all the ballad collecting that had gone on in the United States was focused on what was older. The child tradition of the canon that had been created was given utmost importance. But Lomax essentially argued that these Native American songs, these cowboy songs, were our own kind of native-born folk poetry in the ballad tradition. So he published that in 1910, and it, of course, sparked some other interest by other scholars. The first person to do something that was really comparable to what Child had done with the Old English and Scottish ballads for native North American ballads was a guy named Malcolm Laws, who published in 1950 a scholarly volume called Native American Balladry, and then it was followed some years later by another volume devoted to American broadsides. But in Native American Balladry, he has what he attempted to do was a comprehensive approach, and he categorized all the ballads into different types. So war ballads, ballads of cowboys and pioneers, ballads of lumberjacks, ballads of sailors, ballads about criminals and outlaws, the biggest section of the book. Although murder ballads is a separate category. Ballads of tragedies and disasters, ballads on various topics, and then interestingly the very last category is ballads of the Negro. There is an African-American ballad tradition as well, which has overlapped with the Anglo-American tradition in some ways over time, but is also distinct in some ways. Some of the better known African-American ballads that some of you probably know would be John Henry and Frankie and Johnny and a number of others. Laws, we have to give him credit for including African-American ballads, which most other American ballad collectors had neglected up to that point. But at the same time, he says some funny things about them. First of all, he kind of dismisses them as of less importance because he feels that the whole African-American ballad tradition is derivative of the Anglo-American tradition, which is, of course, not entirely true. Laws presumably knew nothing about the West African tradition of narrative song, the Jali and the Griot in West Africa, who are oral historians of the community. And a lot of that fed into the African-American tradition. Laws also says that most of the black ballads are about criminals, and he says that's because slaves and the descendants of slaves living as marginalized people in our culture had a limited range of life experience. They had very little to sing about, according to Laws, other than to celebrate notorious criminals. I don't think he's quite right about that, to say the least. So he says some funny things, at least to our 21st century sensibilities. Nonetheless, they're in there, and they're significant for that reason. So we're a little bit short on time. Let me see if I can make a... Tell you what, let's jump right to African American balladry.
Yep. Probably about, till 2.
Okay, good, thanks. Yeah. One of the African American ballads that I had planned to talk about and actually to sing for you as well is a ballad about the Titanic. So this is relatively recent in the big scheme of things, given that we've been talking about things that are centuries old. Here's something that's about 1 century old and a very well-documented research event, as we know. There are a number of different ballads that appeared in the wake of the Titanic disaster. Interestingly, nearly all of them are associated with the African American tradition, if you're talking about folk ballads. Now, there were some professionally composed popular songs that may have also been called ballads by the Tin Pan Alley music publishing industry, but I'm concentrating here on folk ballads. So the folk ballads about the Titanic that appeared after the 1912 disaster were almost all from the African American tradition. Some of you might know the Lead Belly Titanic ballad, which is a really, really fascinating song. Some of you might know God Moves on the Water, which was recorded by a number of different artists, mostly black, but some white artists as well. I guess the most famous version of that is probably Blind Willie Johnson's version from 1928, I think. I could be off a year there. The version I'm going to do for you is, you probably know, those of you that are fans of early country music, in association with Ernest Stoneman. One of his first recordings, recorded in late 1923, released in 1924, was the Ballad of the Titanic, or the Sinking of the Titanic, which he recorded as a solo, auto harp, harmonica, and voice. And it's a marvelous recording. He went back and recorded it again in 1926, this time with guitar accompaniment, still with harmonica and still as a solo number. And that one he did for a different record company. He did for the Edison Company. And I happen to have an Edison cylinder of that. Now, we can't listen to it. We have nothing to play it on. But I thought I'd bring this in to show you. Some of you have seen these kinds of cylinders before. They're often called wax cylinders, but it's a misnomer. They're not wax. They're a metallic compound, kind of a soap compound. Different companies had different formulas at different times. Wax is much too fragile. Some of Edison's early experiments were with wax, but he realized very quickly that they don't last. I brought this in to show you, this is the 1926 recording, which was done for Edison Records. There he is, blue amberol. And, you know, if you want to come up and see it after we're done, Sinking of the Titanic, E.V. Stoneman, and there's a little catalog number and so on. This one has special importance to me and just generally, I suppose. This was given to me by Ronnie Stoneman. This was Ernest's own copy of the cylinder from 1926, so 90 years old. And Ronnie gave this to me. So that's something I'll cherish for a long time. So I don't perform it quite like Ernest does, but I guess if I had to point to one source recording, it would be, well, two source recordings. The two from the 1920s by Ernest Stoneman. It was on Monday morning, just about 1 o'clock. At the great Titanic, she began to reel and rock, and the people began to cry, saying, Lord, I'm gonna die. It was sad when that great ship went down. It was sad when that great ship went down. Husbands and wives and little children lost their lives. It was sad when that great ship went down. They were building the Titanic, they said what they could do. They were going to build a ship that the water could not go through. But God's mighty hand showed to the world it could not stand. It was sad when that great ship went down. Wasn't it sad when that great ship went down? Husbands and wives and little children lost their lives. It was sad when that great ship went down. When they left England, they were making for the shore. Rich folks, they declared, they would not ride with the poor, so they sent the poor below. They were the first to go. It was sad when that great ship went down. It was sad when that great ship went down. Husbands and wives and little children lost their lives. It was sad when that great ship went down. People on the ship were a long ways from home, with friends all around them, and they know time had come. And death came riding by, 1600 had to die. It was sad when that great ship went down. It was sad when that great ship went down. Husbands and wives, little children lost their lives. It was sad when that great ship went down. there's much more I could talk about. You probably get the sense I could go on about this all day, which I can. But I can stop here, and we've got like 2 or 3 minutes. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to.
I do have a question. It's something that pertains to the center here. I was hired by Bobby in '79. I used to work for State Parks. And that summer, he hired folklore students to go out and document around parks. And Elaine Lawless was the person who documented musicians, did photography and such, researched families in this area. And I've been telling Gretchen about it, and I didn't know, he was working with Charles Wolfe.
Yeah.
Is all of that stuff there at your center?
No, most of it Bobby still has.
Bobby has it?
Yeah, Bobby still has, and he's, of course, he has his own record label, Sandrock Recordings, where he's released some of that material, not a whole lot, but some of
I
it.
just thought it'd be great if
Yeah.
Gretchen could have some of those recordings here and some of that history.
Yeah, I mean, the only
right
stuff that
here.
we have is stuff that somehow got intermingled with Charles Wolfe's, which is a fair amount of material, but still, I mean, a very tiny fraction of what Bobby and all the people like you that he hired actually
No, we
collected.
didn't have, I wasn't one of the
Okay.
folklorists. I was a
Yeah,
part-
okay, I misunderstood, but
I
I've
mean,
met a
they
lot of
lived
other
with-
people.
They lived with me. They all
Yeah.
called in.
I've met a lot of other
Yeah.
people who got their start working for Bobby, going out, and he would say, well, go talk to this person, go get that,
Yeah.
you know, and a lot of people in folklore and related fields got their start.
So he would
with
be the
Bobby.
person to get.
Well, Bobby
Yeah.
is actually gonna be our presenter at the same event next year, so.
Well, there you go.
And I hope to just come every year and be part of this event, if we can ever, get you back and do a presentation anytime. To have a series, it's just, you have so much to offer, and it's such a short weekend, so we hope
Yeah.
that you can come back and do more of this
I
type
would
of
love
thing.
to.
And maybe we'll have a series or something like that sometime.
That would be a
and,
worthwhile endeavor.
So, anyway, if there's any other quick questions.
A couple of questions.
Yes.
Phil's got one, I got one too. Go ahead.
Do you think about a little Sadie, I think of it as what's his name? Can't think of his name now, but the ballad about the girl who's.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, Doc Watson's version is probably more famous than any.
Doc Watson, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about the origin of that?
Not off the top of my head, no.
I've checked that on the internet.
No, not off the top of my head because, frankly, because I've never put it in my own repertory. So I haven't looked into it that carefully, but it's one that has been researched, I'm quite sure.
I couldn't find it, so
Yeah.
that's okay.
Now you made me curious though, but no, I don't know anything off the top of my head about Little Sadie other than some of my favorite performances of it. Yeah. In the back.
Are you familiar with Doug Orr and Fiona Ritchie's book Wayfaring Stranger?
I am, yeah. It's been a long time since, yes, but I am, yeah. Did you have something particular about it that you wanted to bring
But
up?
I,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, of course, Jean Ritchie learned ballads through oral tradition, through her family, and, of course, she was unusual in many, many ways as a performer, but also as someone who understood the power of this music to be shared with other people outside of her immediate community. She was an extraordinary artist, an extraordinary advocate, but she came at this music, through the true vine, as Mike Seeger used to say about it.
Is there any evidence that the English and Scottish ballads started off in another language, that any of them started off in another language?
A few of them, yeah. There's some intermingling with France, which stands to reason because it's right across the channel there, and also some of the Norwegian ballads. It's a very, very old tradition also in Scandinavia, not just Norway, but Scandinavia generally. So yes, there is some evidence or some hints at least in a few instances, but I don't know that scholars are all that certain about which direction they went, whether they came from the continent and moved over to England and Scotland or the other way around.
Did Child find some evidence of early ones that later ended up there?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm trying to remember specific ones off the top of my head. I think, what's that early one? The earliest one in the whole collection, or the one he's been able to trace back farther than any other, is a ballad called Judas, which he traces back to a 13th century source. It's by a wide margin the oldest one in the collection. And some of the others, I don't know if that oldest source I think might still be English, but some of the other sources that he documents of that same song after that come from France, from Normandy, maybe from the Low Countries as well. You know, that's just going off of sketchy memory.
Is there any other questions? All right, well, this has been a wonderful, I don't have a microphone. This has been a wonderful